Today on the Inside Scoop, there are major transfer portal developments to talk about. We're going to go behind the scenes at Texas, Florida State, Florida, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. I know we're just off vacation, back to work. There's probably too much intel for today, but we're gonna do it. We are capable. But before we get started, guys, do me a favor. Hit subscribe. If you watch one of our videos in the year of 2025 and you are not subscribed, let's change that right now for 26 and hit subscribe to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right. There are almost 3,000 names in the transfer portal, and some are already starting to commit. A few big commitments this weekend. Michigan State wide receiver Nick Marsh to Indiana. It is a new era of college football. Indiana goes and swipes one of the biggest names in the transfer portal, Nick Marsh from Michigan State. Ohio State quarterback Lincoln Kienholz, once a blue chipper out of the high school ranks. He is headed to Louisville, see if he can get back on track with Jeff Brom. Ole Miss is active. No Lane Kiffin, no problem. They land UFDB Sharif Denson and Baylor linebacker Keaton Thomas, both potential starters when they get to Oxford. What else happened this weekend? We had a couple big visits that we got to talk about. Cam Coleman, wide receiver, leaving Auburn, probably the number one most talented player in the entire transfer portal. He visited Texas. The Longhorns got him on campus this weekend, but that battle's not done. A&M and Bama are also involved. Wide receiver Parker Livingston. Speaking of Texas, Parker Livingston is leaving Texas. Arch Manning's best friend, his roommate, could end up at rival Oklahoma. That's one to watch. Wide receiver Mylan Graham just announced he is leaving Ohio State and hitting the portal. He was a big-time wide receiver 2 years out of high school, and Oregon was the team that Ohio State beat out. We'll see if the Ducks can become a player for Graham. DJ Lagway, the former number one quarterback in America, coming out of high school. He's leaving Gainesville and was in Tallahassee this week. And yes, DJ Lagway visited the rival Florida State Seminoles. We'll see if the Noles can lock down the former five-star quarterback. Then we got two big names on the move, Tyler Sorsby out of Cincinnati and Sam Leavitt leaving Arizona State. Those are the two big names. Sorsby, he might not be a lock to Texas Tech. That's what the rumors were coming out of the season, but LSU, Oregon, and Miami are also pushing. And Sam Leavitt, he had a great visit to Kentucky. Yes, Kentucky got him on campus, and it sounded like it went well, but he is still expected to be at LSU and potentially Miami as well. Speaking of Arizona State, they added a big commitment. Cutter Boley. Remember, Kenny Dillingham lost his starter, Sam Leavitt, to the portal and is potentially adding Kentucky's Cutter Boley to the roster. It'll be interesting to see what he does in that offense. Boley has a lot of tools, and we'll see if Dillingham can make it happen. So those are some of the notable moves in the transfer portal. You guys talk to me. What was notable in your world when it came to the transfer portal? Let's talk Ohio State transfer portal developments, and college football moves fast. Just a couple days ago, Ohio State was battling in the college football playoffs. Now they are battling to retain the roster. So we're going to break it down with Jeremy Birmingham, Letterman Rowe. Bring him in. Let's before we get into retaining the roster, edge Chaz Coleman was on campus, one of the best freshmen in America when it came to getting after the quarterback. He's leaving Penn State. His first stop was Columbus, not his only stop. What's the buzz on Coleman coming out of the weekend?
You know, Josh, it's funny. I mean, these are the types of things that really highlight the difference between rumor and reality in a lot of cases. And most people, with the minute Chaz Coleman announced that he was going to be entering the transfer portal, I think a lot of people just assumed it was going to be Ohio State and be done and over with. But, you know, things are changing. Parts are moving. Ohio State is in a position where they see a guy like Chaz Coleman, 6'5", 230 pounds, 235, a big potential guy, a lot of upside off the edge, a guy that wreaks some havoc in his limited playing time at Penn State. But he hasn't made a career start. He has one career sack. And so Ohio State has to balance, like, how much money can you give a guy like that when you're still trying, and this ties into the roster retention thing, but when your efforts are to make sure that you have Kenyatta Jackson back for a fourth year, who is, a potential block O wearer at Ohio State, a leader of the defense, a guy that had 9 sacks this year, a guy that you think is only going to continue to get better in year 2 of Matt Patricia's defense. So, like, you have guys like Kenyatta Jackson, you have to try to figure out, hey, how do we keep him? But also freshmen like Zion Grady, who had better statistics as a freshman than Chaz Coleman. But then you understand these are different players. Chaz Coleman's a stand-up edge rusher, does some different things, more of an Arvell Reese type of prospect down the road than maybe a true defensive end. So you're trying to find the balance. Ohio State, especially the Ohio State fan base, would like to believe that the Buckeyes are just being cheap and they're not going after these guys, but they are. They're just trying to find a way to have their cake and eat it too, and bring back the guys they want, but also bring in the guys they want. So you got to try to find a balance. The Buckeyes are looking at a multi-year opportunity for Chaz Coleman. And so that's really the crux of the discussion right now is it more valuable to Chaz and his people to get immediate upfront dollars that other schools are offering, or does the fact or the plan for a longer term situation at Ohio State make more sense for a kid who's from Ohio? So clearly down at LSU on Saturday, it seems like the Tigers are generating some buzz there. Tennessee and his former defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, are another one to watch, but Buckeyes are not out of it, but they are trying to balance multiple things. And they're not in a position where they're trying to start over on the roster like LSU is or Tennessee is on their defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, because guys like Zion Grady didn't come cheap when they landed him out of the high school ranks. And if you believed him in high school, then maybe that money that's already been invested, that money, time, and resources that's already been invested might be better to develop the talent rather than bring it in. So that leads us to retaining the roster. You hit on a couple defensive linemen, but who else is it important for Ohio State to keep in the fold?
I mean, the biggest ones are Kenyatta Jackson, who I mentioned, but also Caden McDonald, another defensive lineman, first-team All-American, and a guy who was a Bednarik finalist, and he's the best defensive tackle in the country. Now, from an Ohio State perspective, they realize it may be difficult. NFL mock drafts have shown him in the late first round pretty much since September. The Buckeyes are banking on the fact that his NFL grades are not exactly showing that high. Now, that's not to say they're not first day, beginning of second day, but it's not a guarantee. And so Ohio State's trying to find a way to show Caden McDonald and his family, this is what we can guarantee you at Ohio State. This is what we can guarantee you in another year, Matt Patricia. And that's going to be the rub. He's the biggest piece at this juncture for Ohio State, because you don't find All-American defensive tackles on trees. So that's a guy you need to retain. On offense, the Buckeyes are still working really hard to see if they can convince Max Clare to come back for a 5th year in college, a guy that transferred in for 1 year from Purdue with the intent of developing for the NFL. He finished with 43 catches. That's the third most in a single season in Ohio State history for a tight end. So he had a productive year, but not really the year I think that people believed he might. So with Jelani Thurman's departure in the transfer portal, losing Will Kazmarek, Max Clare's retention is a big piece for the Ohio State offense, because he's really the only guy you lose on offense that you were counting on to be a piece next year. So, obviously you want to make sure that you don't have surprises between now and January 16th when it comes to receivers like Quincy Porter or Mylan Graham or someone like that you've been developing, former 5-stars themselves. But you have Jeremiah Smith, you have Brandon Ennis back, you've got Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter. That's 4 or 5-star caliber wide receivers right there on your roster. And then you're hosting on Sunday DeAndre Moore, the former Texas Longhorn. The Buckeyes were really, really interested in Jackson Jackson. My name just escaped me. He just committed to LSU this morning, wide receiver from Hawaii. He was a guy that the Buckeyes were really into and thought that he was going to be on campus today. LSU got him to commit before he could make that trip. So, and then Trey Brown, a wide receiver from Old Dominion, he'll visit this week. So they're doing a lot of things to try to retain while supplementing, but you got to try. The real difficulty here, Josh, is that every visit you bring in, every guy that you talk about signing opens the door for someone else to leave. And because there's nobody locked into anything ever in college football at this point. So collective bargaining, please get here soon. You're our hero. Yeah.
It's crazy. And it seemed like the theme last year with Ohio State was roster retention. The theme this year, roster retention. But we also know, like you said, they're going to get aggressive. They're going to add some guys. And when Ohio State does, they're usually impact players because of the conundrum you just talked about. If you're going to bring in a guy, he better be damn good, because the guys behind him might leave. And that's kind of the tipping point there with Ohio State. So when they do get active, I mean, you've mentioned wide receiver. What other positions of need do you think they're going to pursue? Or is it just a couple playmakers?
No, I mean it's a roster that wants to get some supplementation everywhere. They'd like to add another running back. They're waiting to see if any real big names hit the portal there. They do have Jacoby Johnson from Florida on campus today. The wide receiver, as I mentioned, DeAndre Moore is one. Trey Brown is another. They would love to add at least one tight end, maybe two. Mason Williams, who's a big 6'5", 260-pound transfer from the University of Ohio, or Ohio University, pardon me, not the Ohio State University, visited on Saturday. The Buckeyes have had some conversation with Brock Schott, a transfer from Miami, another tight end who just left Miami after a freshman year. He was a guy that Keenan Bailey and the Buckeyes thought that they were going to land a year ago, ended up going to Miami, and now they can get a second chance there. Defensive line is the biggest spot, and whether Kenyatta Jackson or Caden McDonald return or not, Ohio State needs help there. John Walker from Central Florida is another player that the Buckeyes had a silent commitment from a few years ago that they really like, and that he's supposed to visit on Monday. We have had a tough time getting that confirmed, but that's out there. Linebacker, they'd like to add one. Defensive end, you want one or two. Defensive tackle, want one or two. And cornerback, because of the surprise departures of Bryce West and Aaron Scott, cornerback becomes a spot that Ohio State really needs to attack. Kayan Lee, who's another former longtime Ohio State commitment who ended up flipping to Auburn 3 years ago on signing day. He's on campus on Sunday, so that's one that the Buckeyes are hoping to get done. He's a real natural fit in the slot for the Buckeyes as a nickel safety, a guy to replace Lorenzo Styles, and to now ostensibly replace Bryce West, who will be departing and heading somewhere else. So there's moving parts, and that's the thing. As I said, a lot of these needs might change by the 16th because you might lose 10 more players. You just don't know,
right?
Because right now there's no control over anything.
Man, well, it is a crazy time for Ohio State fans, and you guys are doing a heck of a job at Letterman Row following all these latest developments. I implore Ohio State fans to go check it out, but also talk with us. How are you guys feeling about the transfer portal? Who is your top target when it comes to making additions? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's get an update on Michigan recruiting. When it comes to the transfer portal, yeah, we talk Michigan recruiting all the time, but today we're going to focus on the transfer portal. We got E.J. Holland here with the Wolverine, and we're going to go behind the scenes of what's going on with the Michigan Wolverines as it pertains to the portal. But before we do that, Michigan fans, we love talking Wolverine, recruiting, transfers, whatever it is, we're talking it, and you guys should hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. We're going to keep it going all off season long. All right, let's bring in Wolverine insider E.J. Holland. EJ, there's a buzz across America right now with big name visitors all over, taking trips left and right when it comes to the transfer portal. Michigan, though, kind of quiet this weekend. What's with Michigan in the portal? Why no visitors this weekend?
Yeah, really slow start to the transfer portal for Michigan, and I think that can be attributed to the staff just being hired. They just fully announced the entire coaching staff this weekend as far as the on-field, the 10 guys that can go out and recruit the true staff. And they're still working to fill out some, remaining spots like analysts and assistant position coaches, the recruiting department. We still don't know what the general manager situation will look like. Right now, Sean McGee, Michigan's current general manager, is still working for the Wolverines and still working on roster retention. But, I don't know if Kyle Whittingham's going to bring in his own GM or an assistant GM or what that department will look like. And that has a lot to do with just the entire management of the roster and how they attack the portal. So I think Michigan is just playing from behind right now. I do expect them to get some visitors at some point in the next week. It's just not progressing as some of the other blue bloods across the country. I mean, you see a school like Texas, they have a ton of visitors. LSU has a ton of visitors. Miami's in the middle of the playoff run. They have a ton of visitors. So I think it's a little frustrating, and fans have the right to be frustrated. But again, the staff just got here, and the big thing for them, the bigger focus for them initially, as opposed to the portal, has been roster retention, has been making sure guys stay, on the team, that they believe in the program under Kyle Whittingham. And you've seen some key guys hit the portal already and visit some of the other schools that I just mentioned. So just an interesting situation. I think things will pick up in Ann Arbor soon, but yeah, not the most ideal start that you would want in the portal, I guess.
All right, not portal news, but I did see Savion Hyder has enrolled. I mean, that's pretty big news when it comes to roster management.
Yeah, Savion Hyder's enrolled. Most of the guys we were expecting, or all of the guys we were expecting to enroll early, with the exception of Malachi Lee, have arrived on campus, have enrolled. And Malachi Lee, of course, as we talked about last show, Josh put out a statement that he's sticking with Michigan and is locked in, but won't be enrolling early. But
Yeah.
I think getting guys in like Savion Hyder, who is an obvious immediate impact player at the running back position, and Travis Johnson enrolled this weekend as well. He's an impact player right away at the wide receiver position, which is huge. Michigan has to find a way to get some guys out of the portal there, but I think Travis can be an immediate impact player. So all of that is positive. But again, I think we just have our eye so close on who's going to stay, who's going to go. The good news for Michigan fans is Andrew Marsh has not entered the portal. That was a big one to keep. The bad news is you've seen Cole Sullivan, star linebacker. He visited Oklahoma, a couple offensive linemen, Jake Winera, Andrew Sprague, visited Texas over the weekend. Keeping them is paramount, but you obviously don't want to see them making other visits. And I think Oklahoma and Texas are competitors for those guys, but Michigan definitely trying to retain some of these players that have just jumped in the portal.
Could they fill some needs with Utah players coming from Kyle Whittingham's old program?
Yeah, that's definitely something we've been keeping track of as well. I think with Michigan, you're kind of in a unique situation because you have usually been hampered a bit in the portal by academic restrictions. They are very, very tight on credits. And so a lot of the transfers you've seen coming into Michigan have either been, guys going into their senior year or graduate transfers. So it'll be interesting to see if the rules bend a little bit as we've gotten deep into the NIL era now and other schools have adjusted. But yeah, there are definitely some Utah players out there. And, it starts with John Henry Daly, the number 6 overall recruit or player in the transfer portal, star edge player. Michigan obviously hired Utah's head coach in Kyle Whittingham, but they also brought in his defensive line coach as well. So Michigan battling BYU for John Henry Daly. He'd be a massive addition. There are a couple of players in the secondary, Smith Snowden, Teo Johnson. Those are guys that could come in, make an immediate impact at Michigan. I talked to Smith Snowden's father yesterday, and they have major interest in Michigan, so I wouldn't be surprised if that visit comes along. And then defensive lineman Dallas Vakalahi, massive defensive tackle. Michigan hasn't really had, that big, over 315-pound defensive tackle since Kenneth Grant, really. So maybe Dallas can fit that role as a nose, and he's a guy who is on campus at UCLA this weekend. So Michigan battling the Bruins in that portal recruitment. It'll be interesting to see if more guys pop up from Utah or BYU. The staff obviously has heavy connections to those two programs. So definitely would be nice to see Michigan add some guys from either of those programs.
All right. So there's a lot of names Michigan's involved with or that, they're showing interest in, but when do you think we can get some big names on campus? Are they coming this week?
Yeah, I think that's the hope is for this. Again, Michigan kind of playing from behind right now. So I think you could start to see some of these visits happen in the next several days. There have been guys that have said, hey, we're looking to schedule a visit. Michigan obviously has the face of the program in Bryce Underwood at quarterback, but they are looking at Mason McKenzie out of Saginaw Valley State to provide some depth. He's a guy who could visit here soon. Another guy that could visit soon is Wyatt Young, wide receiver out of North Texas. He's the number 32 overall player in the transfer portal. So, I think some of these guys are just starting to talk out with the staff. The staff's just starting to prioritize and figure out NIL. But like I said, wide receiver has to be the position to watch. They have to get some of these guys in. Wyatt Young, Derek Gill from Syracuse is a name I reported earlier today that Michigan has been in contact with now. So Yeah, I mean, as far as visits go, I would expect it to happen soon. The
Yeah.
sooner the better for Michigan. I mean, they have to get rolling here.
I think they will. I think they will. Michigan fans, talk with us. How you guys feeling about Kyle Whittingham hitting the ground running? And also, what is your biggest transfer portal need? Put it in the comment section below. Let's talk Florida Gator transfer portal news. It's been a busy offseason. Boy, has it been a busy offseason between the coaching changes, between high school recruiting, and now the transfer portal is open. We are going to go behind the scenes of some of the action that's coming out of Gainesville. But before we do that, Florida fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel because we're going to be talking Florida Gator recruiting, transfer portal. It's going to be a busy offseason. We're going to talk about it all. So jump on board, hit subscribe. All right. Let's bring in Gator insider Zach Albaverdi from Gators Online. You guys are doing a phenomenal job this weekend. There's a ton of news coming out. Let's start at quarterback. DJ Lagway is out. Who is in? I think we know the answer to this, but when is it going to happen?
Yeah, I think ever since DJ Lagway decided to depart from Florida and the buzz started to circulate about Aaron Philo, the former Georgia Tech quarterback, to be honest, Josh, he was lined up to be the starter for the Yellow Jackets in 2026. He has now entered the portal. He has now made his way to Gainesville for an official visit. And by all accounts, this seems like a foregone conclusion that he will follow Buster to Gainesville. It's just a matter of when. I don't anticipate him, testing the waters and going to visit other schools. I think that he probably is one and done to Florida in terms of taking visits. Now, does he pop Sunday as we record this? Does he come out in the next 24 to 48 hours? I don't think it will be long because I think Florida wants to lock him up and be able to sell him to other recruits that they want to, transfers that they want to go recruit out of the portal. So you got to get a quarterback on board, and it seems like they have zeroed in on him.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about who was on campus this weekend, but I kind of think the most intriguing part of the portal right now for the Florida Gators is roster retention. And is it over? Is it done? Eugene Wilson gets out of town, Jaden Woods, DJ Lagway. Those were kind of Sharif Denson, some of the more notable names, but there's still one big one hanging out there in Jaden Ball, where if he were to hit the portal in the open market, he would instantly become the number one player at his position. Now, like I said, we saw Dallas Wilson resign. We've seen Vernell Brown III resign. So kind of those guys are off your radar, but are you still watching Jaden Ball?
Oh, yeah, 100%. He's the guy that I think Florida fans are waiting and hoping to see an announcement from really soon. The portal opened, and he has not entered his name yet. So that's good news for the Gators. Obviously, with his former position coach, Jabbar Jaloop, going to Texas, that has made the Longhorns a serious threat. Yeah. They have a need at the running back position, and we all know they've got money to spend. However, Florida has done a lot of work to keep Jaden in Gainesville. They went out to visit him on Christmas Eve. John Summerall's family, wife, kids, even his mother made that trip, according to Keith Niebuhr, and along with some coaches, to really show Jaden and his family how much of a priority that they are to them. And this is one day removed from John Summerall's funeral for his father. So right. He's really made it a priority to get Jaden. I know that the communication has been constant with him, also with Ball's parents. And now we wait. I think that, in my opinion, Josh, he's not going to transfer to Texas unless he goes and takes a visit out there. And that would probably have to happen after he entered the portal. So as long as that name doesn't go in there, I think Florida's probably feeling good about where they stand. However, they're going to want an answer from him, I would imagine, relatively soon, because if he's not going to stay in Gainesville, they only have 3 scholarship running backs on the roster. If they lose him, they only have 2. They're going to have to reshape their whole running back room. So they got to figure out where they go from here soon.
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling he's going to stay. I think you saw that mass exodus, if you will, when Summerall and after the season. And now I kind of feel like things have solidified a little bit in Gainesville with Summerall hitting the ground running at his one job instead of working 2 at the same time. So that could also help. Now, who was on campus this weekend? Who were some of the early priority transfers that were in Gainesville?
Yeah, the Gators had a really big visit weekend. The number that I'd heard initially that they were looking to bring, now this is the middle of the week, but it was like 7 to 8 visitors. Well, they ended up having at our last count, more than a dozen official visitors that made their way to Gainesville from the transfer portal. We mentioned Aaron Philo. He's obviously a big name. A couple former Penn State offensive linemen that played for Phil Trotwine, they made their way to Gainesville. You got to think that there's a good chance that the Gators can get them to follow their former position coach. The Gators had a couple receivers in town, a couple defensive linemen, 3 specialists because they lose all 3 of their specialists. They were all seniors. They were all starters. So they're going to look to replace those guys as well. So I give the staff credit, man. Like offense, defense, and special teams, they really hit some big needs out of the gate here this first visit weekend, and look like they probably got some guys on campus that they've got a good shot at signing and getting into Gainesville.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on the talent level? And it's early. We're going to continue talking Florida Gator transfer portal over the course of the next 10 days. So it's still early. But what's your impression of what they're bringing in? Because we talked about what they lost, but when they bring in, are these frontline impact players? Are they quality depth pieces? What right now is coming to check out Florida Gator football?
I think you got a mix of everything, Josh. Obviously, you're going to want to add some transfers that can come in and compete for starting roles, and the Gators have some spots that are wide open for guys to be able to do that. But you also are not going to be able to get starter caliber players across the board. You're going to have to get some depth. You're going to have to get some guys that can just at the very least create competition. I think certainly when you look at the 2 Penn State offensive linemen, those are 2 guys where the Gators lost, 3 starters on their offensive line that could step in and potentially be impact transfers for the Gators. Certainly Aaron Philo, who we mentioned at the start of this segment, he's a guy that's going to come in and contend to be quarterback 1 for the Gators. And then, I mean, it's probably not going to get anybody excited, but they're specialists. Like the 2 from Tulane that came and visited and have a chance to come over with John Summerall were 2 of the best kickers and punters in the nation, respectively, in their categories. So those are 2 big gets. But you're also going to get some guys that you're kind of playing money ball with, right? Like the defensive lineman transfer from Jacksonville State, who's got to lose after him. Like you might not break the bank on him, but they're certainly counting on somebody like him to come in and provide immediate impact, immediate guy in the defensive line rotation. So those are some of the names and the positions that they're watching, quarterback, defensive line, offensive line, and wide receiver. And then last but not least, certainly DB is a spot that they might add a handful of guys after the losses that they had to the portal.
All right. Last question before I let you get out of here and update Gators Online some more. There's been some debate on how many quarterbacks does UF need to take in the portal. Yeah. What's your opinion on that? And is it possible these days to get a backup quarterback in the portal? I know everybody always talks about it, but these quarterbacks aren't in the portal to be a backup. So what's your opinion on what the Gators need to do in terms of quarterback numbers?
Yeah, I do think, Josh, that they probably will look to sign 2 transfer quarterbacks if they can. Just from a number standpoint, like you lost 3 scholarship quarterbacks in DJ Lagway, but also Harrison Bailey and Clay Millen. Now, Clay Millen never played at Florida, but you got to replace those numbers that you've lost. So I think you get Tramel Jones re-signed. You bring in Will Griffin as an early enrollee, and then you got Aaron Philo that would come in and compete. But I think that you still got to go get another guy if you can find the right fit, like you said.
Yeah, what do you sell them on? I mean, you don't really sell them on –
the way that you look at that competition right now, it's probably a Tramel Jones-Aaron Philo battle. Right. So you're not going to go out and spend top dollar for a second quarterback. You're probably going to spend less on that guy than you are on Aaron Philo. So you're right, Josh. It is a hard sell. I will say Florida was able to do it last year with Harrison Bailey. That dude came in knowing he was going to be DJ Lagway's backup, and he still came because he wanted a shot. Wanted to be at Florida, wanted to be in the SEC. So you can find the right guys that are willing to do it. But I do think Florida fans have to be mindful of the fact that those guys that are in the portal, you're right, they're looking for an opportunity to start. And if they don't have that, they might not consider your school.
Well, Philo and Jones battling it out for QB1. I mean, what else can you ask for? You got your quality number 2 on whoever loses that battle. So we'll see what happens. Just kind of intriguing to crunch the numbers at the quarterback position. But Gator fans, talk to us. There's so much going on right now. Who is your most important transfer portal target? Let us know. Comment section below.
I'll give you one.
What you got?
Jaden Woods.
Yeah, what are the odds? Is there anybody out there that Florida could bring back in the fold?
Yeah, Jaden Woods would be the guy that tops that list. I think that they're still maybe working on Mekhi Barrow, but that it doesn't look like there's as good of a chance with that one. From our latest reporting at Gators Online, the plan is for John Summerall to go out there and meet with Jaden Woods this week. If
so it's
everything
still alive.
lines up.
That recruitment is still alive.
100%. And I can add here on the inside scoop, Josh, like when John Summerall came and evaluated the roster with his staff, the guy that they wanted to keep the most on offense was Jaden Ball, and the guy that they wanted to keep the most on defense was Jaden Woods. So that's Jaden and Jaden. Yeah. So that's kind of how they feel and where they stand with those guys, and they're not going to give up until they're absolutely out of it.
All right. Well, you guys go get your updates at Gators Online. Zach, thanks for stopping by today on the Inside Scoop.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
Let's get a transfer portal update from Tallahassee. We're going to talk a little Florida State right now as it is busy. We got Matt Lasser on the ground from War Chant right now at FSU headquarters as some of these big names are already making it to campus. We got news on quarterback recruiting. So before we get started, Florida State fans, do me a favor real quick and hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel, whether it's recruiting the high school level or the transfer portal. We are covering FSU all offseason long, so jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in Matt Lasser from War Chant on the ground in Tallahassee. The big news everybody's talking about is quarterback recruiting. Thomas Castellanos is moving on. FSU needs a new quarterback. Who are the big names on campus this weekend?
Yeah, a lot of them. Well, at first, we all thought number one option was Colton Joseph. Obviously, that ship has sailed. He ended up going to Wisconsin. Then we have Anthony Calandria, who just arrived a few hours ago this morning. And then the big news, if you guys have heard of him, I'm not really sure, that DJ Lagway guy, he's expected on campus later tonight. He's going to arrive tonight, do all the visit stuff tomorrow. And that one was a surprise, I think, for a lot of people, just because rival quarterback from UF and now looking at Florida State. Started getting word yesterday that something was there, and then got it confirmed, was able to put out contact, and everything kind of spiraled from there to where the visit got set up.
Yeah, and it's happened. And then Ashton Daniels is also coming in. When will he be on campus?
Yeah, he will be here tomorrow as well. So, as I said, Calandria already here. I think there might be a point where all three of them are here at one time. We'll see if that holds true. But, with Daniels, we're not really exactly sure when Calandria is ending. I think he's coming up for a little bit more tomorrow. So, yeah, with that, it's kind of weird. I didn't think they were going to bring in more than one quarterback at once, but we're going to have all three on campus at one time, or potentially at least two. At the very least, there will be two options here.
Yeah, being on the ground out there, do you get a sense that there's a priority, or are they bringing these guys in to not only recruit them, but also get to know if they're a good fit for the program?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above there. It's kind of been hard to tell who's number one priority. With Calandria coming in first, you feel like that holds weight. You think it does, at least just because normally, with how the portal works, the firsts are a big deal, right? Where the player goes first, who they get on campus first, because a lot of the times in this instance, the first visit matters the most. You make that offer that you can't refuse, and you see what happens. And, that makes you think Calandria's first option. We don't really know. Personally, I think if you're going off scheme fit, Calandria is probably the best option. Now, if you're going off who's the best quarterback out of all of them, DJ Lagway is probably the best choice. Ashton Daniels is probably a backup option there on all three. So it's very kind of interesting to see how this is going to play out. It's kind of hard to tell right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, because if you watch Thomas Castellanos in Gus Malzahn's offense, he ran the ball a lot. DJ Lagway did not run the ball, and did not run the ball effectively. Now, whether that was injury or whatever it was, but like you said, DJ Lagway probably has the highest ceiling out of any of the quarterbacks that are recruiting right now. So we'll just have to wait and see. We'll talk more about that as the week goes on. It doesn't look like Florida State's going to come out of the weekend with a new quarterback. I kind of get the sense that they're bringing these guys in, and then they'll make a decision maybe in a couple more days. Do you get that sense?
Yeah, I do get that sense, especially with a lot of them here on Monday. Probably that, not Tuesday, but like Wednesday, Thursday is probably what you're looking at for an answer, which would make sense. And then, I think it could be a big domino effect. They're starting to get a lot of traction with guys that are here. Like you got a Texas running back, Kiner, not really sure how to pronounce his name, but Kiner coming tonight as well. So you got a lot of good offensive targets. And, if you are a quarterback, this receiving core that's coming back is really good with Deuce Robinson announcing his return. LaWayne McCoy is expected back at this point, and same with Mekhi Danzy. So if you're a quarterback, why wouldn't you want to play with that receiving core? Now, the offensive line is up in the air right now. You still need to wait and see what that happens. You have Bryant Williams, an offensive lineman from University of Louisiana at Lafayette, on campus right now. We like where that stands. You have Nate Pabst, great name, by the way, who is here, offensive tackle from Bowling Green, a few others they're involved with, Trovin Baugh from South Carolina. So I think if you're a quarterback coming in here, you like who you can get the ball to, you like your weapons. Your question is, what can you get for the offensive line in front of you? And especially a guy like Lagway, who got banged up at Florida, because that's a really important factor.
Yeah, I agree. And, he had a great career as a high school quarterback, not such a great career as a college quarterback. We'll see if that can get back on track. Now, speaking of getting back on track, we saw a couple Florida State departures, including a Jabril Rawls and a few others that have come back to the roster. Is there anybody that had entered the portal that right now FSU is still trying to retain?
The only one I really look at right now is Omar Graham. You would like, and that's because you just see what his activity on Twitter a lot with Ernie Sims being promoted to linebackers coach, and so that's the only one you look at really.
Well, that's a position of need right there.
Yeah,
big time.
It is, and you would like to see them. Randy Pittman still have a shot there, but with tight ends coming on campus the past 2 days, two different ones. Bryles from East Carolina actually just wrapped up his visit moments ago, but. You figure that's probably not happening. But yeah, other than that, I think Omar Graham and Randy Pittman's a pipe dream. Oh, Earl Little, who declared for the draft, is likely to come back. That's not confirmed, but from what we've heard, it sounds like that is what's happening. So that's another big step of the secondary coming back. They did a really good job retaining the secondary after the firing of Pat Surtain, and it looked pretty bleak there for a while.
Yeah, especially when Rawls had announced his intentions to hit the portal.
Yeah.
So that being said, and we're going to talk more Florida State transfer portal as the week goes on, but how active, if it's any indication from the weekend, is this week coming going to be a big week for visitors as well?
Oh, yeah, I don't expect it to stop at all, Josh. I think they're going to keep – it's like a revolving door. It's been like 4 to 5 to 6 kids a day. The first – it actually started off slow. On Friday, there was nobody here. And then it was a big explosion starting yesterday with kids coming on campus, and then the Lagway news. It's been a steady pace here. There's about, like I said, Bryles just left. I believe there's still 5 kids on campus right now. About like 2, 3, or 4 expected to come in tonight for tomorrow. So yeah, a lot of movement going on, especially with they had like upward higher 20s enter the portal. I think most of those were pushed out, but it's it still need to come in and replace those. So yeah, a lot of guys coming in.
Florida State did land their first commitment of the transfer cycle in Naheem Chandler, and they go down to South Alabama to do it. But he has great length. Was a top performer at that program. Matt, what do we like about Chandler?
Yeah, I think he has the Power 4 expertise, right? He came from Georgia Tech. Everything you hear about him and what you see about him on film is good. They even talked to him about playing beside or on the other side of Jabril Rawls and think his game fits that or is perfect for that, which is interesting because you have Quindarius Jones there, but that's a conversation for something else. But yeah, it's they needed to get some DBs in because you needed more depth. They still lost guys like Kai Bates and stuff, even though they were able to get starters back. You need depth. You need guys who can be rotation and compete for that starting job. And there's still other guys. You probably still need a safety. They have a USF safety on campus right now, and a few other guys that they're looking at when it comes to DBs. So it's one that they kind of are reinforcing, and they've done a good job at the last week or so.
All right, there it is. Florida State fans, how you guys feeling about the transfer portal? It is open. Florida State has visitors on campus. What do you think of DJ Lagway? Is DJ Lagway your number one target when it comes to the transfer portal? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk Texas transfer portal. We're going to go behind the scenes with Justin Wells of Inside Texas, and there's a lot of buzz right now surrounding guys leaving, guys coming, but we're going to break it all down. Texas fans, do me a favor, though, before we get going. Make sure you guys hit subscribe because we are talking Texas recruiting, Texas transfer portal. It's going to be a busy season here on the Rivals Recruits channel, so make sure you guys are subscribed. All right, let's bring in insider Justin Wells. And I know there were some guys on campus this weekend, but first, and some big-name guys on campus this weekend, but first, why is wide receiver Parker Livingston hitting the portal and saying that, quote, never in a million years that I think I'd be going into the portal? What's going on here as he was Texas's most productive wide receiver?
Yeah, so essentially Texas is trying to make room for Cam Coleman and or a big outside receiver. But they wanted to keep Livingston. They didn't want Parker to necessarily leave. They gave him an offer, an NIL offer. I think the problem was Parker was going to lose snaps. He was going to lose reps. He had kind of a breakout year. He had a fantastic year in some senses.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, fell off a little bit at the end of the year, but still the development was there, and they wanted to keep him. Parker's a great kid, not to mention Arch Manning's good friend and roommate.
Right.
They wanted to keep him, but they're going all in this cycle, and I think it was going to cost Parker some reps.
Yeah.
And I think Parker looked at the bigger picture and thought, he loves Texas. There wasn't many kids on that campus that loved Texas more.
Right.
But I think he thought, well, if I'm not going to get any more opportunity, if I'm not going to get any more reps, I'm going to go find somewhere where I can compete. And that's why you're seeing him taking visits to Indiana. He's going to take a visit to Oklahoma. Somebody's going to steal him, and he's going to wind up being a fantastic receiver. But Texas is, in a sense, trying to make room. They want to bring in a Cam Coleman type. They want to bring in one of those big outside guys. And so I think the writing was on the wall for Parker that, hey, we'll keep you, but you're not going to play very much. And I just don't think that's what he wanted to hear.
And this weekend, Cam Coleman was on campus. As soon as the portal opened, Texas was being tied to Cam Coleman's name. He made it on campus on Friday or Saturday?
I believe he made it to Austin late Friday night. He was on campus by like 9:30 Saturday morning.
Okay. And during his recruitment, I remember A&M. I mean, he was committed to A&M under Jimbo Fisher. I don't really remember Texas being a player like that, but the transfer portal resets everything. He was the first that was Cam Coleman's first visit. What's the buzz coming out after the weekend?
Yeah, so Texas didn't really push for Coleman, and I think it was mainly because they had their eyes on other guys. And A&M, I think he was committed to A&M for a while. Yeah, there before he flipped to Auburn late, and that's why A&M going into this portal window has had some confidence because there's a connection there, a previous relationship. But coming out, Texas wanted to shoot They wanted to shoot the first shot, and it's funny. When we talk about recruiting, high school recruiting, generally getting the last OV is the best.
Yeah.
Because that's the last time you're going to get to see in front of them. But it doesn't take you out of the running for it. Whereas for portal recruiting, if you bring a guy on campus and then he leaves, there's a thought that, well, he may not come back. Because Cam's supposed to go see Texas A&M today. He's supposed to see, I believe, Alabama, USC, probably a handful of other schools. His agent's doing his job. And so, it's going to be funny to see where else he sees. It's going to be funny when he finally has a decision. I think Texas fans may be a little upset that he left without signing. Not necessarily. Portal recruiting is a little bit different. I think Texas did a good job with that first impression, with that first offer, with that first, hey, this is what we're looking for. And also understand this with Cam. I don't think this is a big money play like everyone else is saying. I think he's looking for one good year to boost his draft stock to get back in that first round for 2027. He's looking at the quarterbacks. He's looking at who's throwing the pill around on these programs. And the fact that he got to hang out with Arch Manning last night, I think that's big when we do find out where this is going.
Yeah. And Cam Coleman, not the only big name on campus this first weekend. What other notable names do Texas fans need to hear about?
Ian Jaffard, the defensive lineman from Arkansas, big boy, 3-year starter there in Fayetteville. He was on campus today. I believe he's going to SMU tomorrow. Missouri may be in the mix too, but there was no decision as of right now, and so they're paying attention to that. Andrew Sprague, starting offensive tackle for Michigan, was another one that's a big name that Texas likes. There's another Michigan O-lineman, his name slips my mind, that they're trying to bring in as well, and so that's another one. Edwin Joseph, DB out of Florida State. He's teammates with high school teammates with Derek Cooper, Texas 4-star running back signee. They brought him in yesterday as well. There's a handful of other ones that are expected in today. I think what we're going to see is a handful just sort of slide in over the next few days. I think Texas we know how they're going to operate with this. They're going to go big. There was expected between 12 to 14 guys to be on campus this weekend. That will play out during the week. A lot of these were one-day visits, to my knowledge as well. I don't think any of these were official visits per se, but man, just if you're a fan of Texas, just hang on and refresh it at On3 and Inside Texas, because this thing is fluid. This thing is moving if you're following Pete Nakos, you see it. This thing changes on a dime, and we'll have you ready at Inside Texas.
Yeah, I've been on your site all weekend just hitting refresh. So Texas, when we talk about big players in the transfer portal, Texas is one of them, if not the biggest player in the portal. So that being said, what do you think is the biggest need to fill, and who are some of the big name targets that you think Texas is going to pursue over the next couple of days?
For me, it's linebacker. Mm-hmm. You lost two-year starters, Anthony Hill Jr. to the draft, and Leona Lafau, who's probably going to BYU for a big bag. And so that's, to me, is huge. That's a big one. Jaden Woods from Florida as an edge linebacker type.
Great player.
He was supposed to be on campus. That's a kid that Texas feels really good about. Robert Woodward was another one, the linebacker out of Auburn. That was a linebacker Texas really liked. I think Miami was trending there as of late, but again, those things change. Middle line, just linebacker in general. If you watch the Citrus Bowl, Texas had 2 scholarship linebackers on the field the whole day. And so that's a big hole. But interior offensive line, if you ask any fan anywhere about Texas, they're going to tell you interior offensive line. Last night, Texas in Trevor all SEC first team left tackle Trevor Gooseby agreed for him to return. Brandon Baker had a really good last month and a half of the season at right tackle. They've got to fix the in-betweens, man. We can see him getting a left guard, a center, and a right guard. We could even see him possibly getting a swing tackle that can play guard and tackle. That's the most important thing right now. That is it. I know Cam Coleman sounds sexy. I know everyone wants to talk about running back and which guy could potentially come in, a Jaden Ball and Isaac Brown. But, buddy, linebacker, if we're going to get real, the inside at linebacker needs to be fixed in the interior offensive line. And I think that's where they're going to go biggest. Hey, they look great at defensive line. I still think they could add 1 or 2 guys. They look great at corner. I still think they could add 1. They could use another safety, but with Jelani McDonald coming back. And on the other side of the ball, like we said, everyone's talking about wide receiver. Texas is going to add another guy. Right. They're going to go. They're fishing for the big marlin. And so that's another one. But listen, the priorities are the interior offensive line and the middle linebacker spots. Those two have to get right before 2026 and a national title contention can be mentioned in the same sentence.
Yeah, some really important positions through the middle of the offense, whether it be interior offensive line or the middle of the defense, defensive linemen, linebackers. They're looking at a safety. So it's right up the middle of the field. And you guys have been doing a great job covering it all on Inside Texas. Texas fans, talk to us, though. This is the moment that the roster, there is no more spring window. So either you fix it now or you don't fix it at all. So Texas fans, who's your biggest priority when it comes to transfer portal? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk Oklahoma transfer portal developments. The Sooners trying to build on what was a great season, making the playoffs, but they want more, and they're going to do it through roster development. We got George Stoya here from Soonerscoop.com, and we're going to hit on the big names that are already on campus. There's even more rumors swirling about other big names interested in Oklahoma. So we're going to go behind the scenes of the Sooners transfer portal efforts. But before we do that, Oklahoma fans, do me a favor and hit subscribe. We love talking Oklahoma recruiting, transfer. If it gets recruited, we're going to cover it here on the Rivals Recruits channel. So hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in George Stoia from Sooner Scoop. You guys have been killing it over there on the site. Names are already on campus this weekend. What's the buzz coming out of Norman?
Yeah, Josh, thanks for having me on. First of all, I would just say that they've been very busy, and this goes back to even the portal being open. They kind of had already identified some guys that they wanted to go after, obviously several positions that they wanted to go after, and I'm going to start at tight end. Florida tight end Hayden Hansen was on campus this weekend. He's been a huge target for Oklahoma, and that's a position that they're kind of rebuilding. They just fired Joe John Finley earlier this week, the tight ends coach, and they're going to have to start all over in that room, and they feel like Hayden Hansen is somebody that can come in, be a day one starter. I think he's 6'7", 270 pounds, started all 12 games for Florida a year ago. He is a top priority for Oklahoma, and they feel good about where that's at. I think he's still on his visit as of Sunday morning. We'll see if they can end up closing the deal. The other one that I'd mentioned is Colorado State running back Lloyd Avant. He's another guy that they kind of identified as someone that can come in, be a scat back, provide some depth in a room that they have some really young talent. Xavier Robinson and Torrey Blaylock are expected to be back next year. They're bringing in Jonathan Hatton, one of the top running backs in the country in the 2026 class. But they wanted to add somebody that can do a little bit different stuff, be dynamic, help in special teams, and just kind of be a depth piece for them. So those are the two guys this past weekend that have been on campus. They're expected to get Cody Sigler, the Arkansas State defensive tackle, on campus as well at some point this weekend. I think he visited Auburn on Saturday, and he's another positional guy that Oklahoma feels like can come in and be a part of the rotation on the defensive line. And then the big one, Josh, is Terrell Harris, the wide receiver from Virginia. That's another position that Oklahoma really wants to upgrade. We'll get into Isaiah Satania and if they can keep him around for another year. But if they can get somebody like a Terrell Harris from Virginia, one of the best wide receivers in the transfer portal, they would feel really good, as well as Parker Livingstone from Texas. He's expected to be on campus either Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, and we'll get to him in a second. But, the transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh. Is there anybody on the current roster that could still hit the portal that you're trying to monitor?
Yeah, there's a handful of guys, and you even look at the guys that have left. There's been quite a few. There's been kind of an exodus of players, and I think some of that is this new front office at Oklahoma, Jim Nagy and his staff. They've been working on player evaluations throughout the year. But I think you look at an Ivan Carrion as somebody that could potentially hit the portal, a wide receiver, tall guy. He's played some limited snaps, but I just don't know where he fits in the room, especially if they're going out and trying to upgrade at that position. I would really watch the wide receiver room. Even a Zion Reagans is another one. Didn't really play much this year. Wouldn't be shocked if he were to hit the transfer portal. Other than that, I don't think there's a ton of guys. Maybe a Jaden Hardy at safety, somebody that, played quite a bit of snaps this year for Oklahoma, but that safety room is pretty deep. They've got some really good young talent in there. I wonder if he gets lost in the shuffle. Same with maybe some guys, at linebacker or defensive tackle, just depending on, guys that they're trying to bring in. Same with tight end. I said they're going to totally rebuild that roster. Cade McIntyre is another one. He's been in the program now, I think 3 or 4 years. Wouldn't be shocked if he jumps in the portal. We already saw Caden Helms and Carson Kent get in that tight end room. I think that there's probably a good chance Cade McIntyre also jumps out there. But they really haven't lost anybody yet that I would say is a big loss. Logan Hallen, the swing tackle, went in a few days ago. Oklahoma would have liked to keep him just for depth reasons. But in today's portal world, right. I just don't think depth's a reality for a lot of schools.
Yeah, really tough to hang on to quality depth. But speaking of that, Texas losing Parker Livingston, and it's interesting that you bring up Oklahoma with him. How big of a priority is he? I mean, he was Texas's most productive wide receiver. Maybe not the best skill set on that roster, but certainly the most productive. Now he's available. Is OU taking this serious?
Oh, definitely. He's somebody that they've had high on their list. And, I think when Cam Coleman first went in the transfer portal, there's a few people that wanted to say, OU's going to get involved. They should go after this guy. And the reality was that was never going to happen. Not that Oklahoma couldn't afford him, but they have other positions of need. And obviously what Cam Coleman's going to demand is a lot. Whereas they look at a Parker Livingstone as somebody that won't cost as much, can come in and be really productive.
Yeah.
Big bodied wide receiver, 6'4". That's something they don't really have on the roster right now, at least somebody that's proven like he is. And so I think he's a very high priority, as well as Trell Harris. I think that they're trying to land both those guys. They feel like if they can get those two guys or guys like that in the program, it could really upgrade their offense, especially coming off a year where really Isaiah Satania was pretty much the only threat. Deion Burks had a nice finish to the season in the college football playoff, but they never really had that big-bodied guy that can go up and make a competitive catch, and they feel like Parker can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, hey, it always feels good to steal one from your rival. So
Yeah.
when it comes to filling needs, it sounds like tight end, wide receiver, definitely an early priority there. What else do you think Oklahoma needs to do before the transfer window closes?
Definitely offensive line. And Oklahoma feels really good about the starting five that they have coming back next year. Obviously, the true freshmen and Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje. I think those are going to be your starting left tackle and starting right tackle the next couple of years. Jake Michael is back at center, Eddie Pierre-Louis at left guard, Heath Ozaida at right guard. So you feel good about that core five.
Mm-hmm.
After that, though, they're really young, and they lost quite a few veteran pieces to the portal that were kind of, good depth guys that had developed through the program. They got to go out and probably get 3 guys in the transfer portal on the offensive line just to have enough bodies. And so, they have a center on today from Western Kentucky. He's visiting this weekend. Caleb Nida, I think is how you say his name. He'll be on campus. He would be a really good depth piece, a backup center potentially for Oklahoma. And then I would say linebacker.
Right.
And that's another position I failed to mention earlier, Josh. I apologize. Cole Sullivan from Michigan is a high priority. He was on campus yesterday, and it feels like he's either going to go back to Michigan, which I know Michigan does not want to lose him at linebacker, or he's going to end up being a Sooner. So Oklahoma's working hard at linebacker. I know they have a couple other guys that they're in on. Owen Long from Colorado State, the nation's leading tackler at linebacker, as well as Gideon Lampron from Bowling Green. So they're looking to add at linebacker. We'll see what happens with Kip Lewis. They're trying to retain him. I know that they've offered him a very good package. I think that he's leaning towards coming back. We'll see if he makes that announcement, as well as Isaiah Satania. But linebacker depth for sure. They lost Kobe McKenzie in the transfer portal. Owen Heineke, he's trying to get a 6th year of eligibility. They don't feel confident that he's going to get that. So linebacker depth is certainly something that they're trying to work on in the portal.
Lots of news coming out of Oklahoma, and you guys do a phenomenal job covering it all. It's Sooner Scoop. You guys got to get there if you're an OU fan, but we appreciate you dropping by on a busy weekend over in Oklahoma. Transfer portal news. We appreciate you stopping by the Inside Scoop today.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.